Today's video is going to be all about the newest upcoming palette from Arttitude Cosmetics, their Submerged Palette, which is this beautiful siren theme. And just in case you're new to my channel, my name is NOOPUR and I love indie makeup and all things color and sparkle. And in this video, I'm going to be doing some detailed swatches of this palette. I'll be doing a look using it and then giving you my overall thoughts on it, like the formulas and all of that good stuff towards the end of the video. Now, before I get into launch details, I just want to disclose that I did receive this palette in PR and it will be launching on October 23rd at 6 p.m. British Standard Time, and it will retail for approximately, or for £40, approximately 46 euros, including VAT for EU member states. And then if you live in the US, it will cost about $64, which is inclusive of tariffs. So I want to take a moment here to mention that Arttitude had previously stopped shipping to the US because of the tariff situation, but they have since resolved that and they are trying to absorb as much of the costs as possible internally, but some of those costs do need to be passed on to the customer. So there will be a 20% increase, I think is what it is, on their products, which isn't the entire increase because like I mentioned, they're trying to absorb the cost, but that is kind of like the bargain they were able to make to resume shipping to the US. That being said, regardless of wherever you live, the palette is still code eligible, and I do have an affiliate code with the brand. It's just my name, NOOPUR, and it is affiliated, so I do receive a small commission if you use the code, as well as you getting the discount. And I also want to mention that this palette is launching on my birthday, actually, October 23rd, so if you would like to thank me for the content, give me a little birthday gift, I would really appreciate it if you could use my code. I will leave all of the details for the launch date, the pricing, their website, my code, all that good stuff in the description box. And now let's get into close-ups and swatches. Here's the palette up close. It is magnetic and the pans are labeled on the back. The color story is reflective of the dark siren theme. Here are swatches of the entire palette, but I'll also be doing individual shimmer swatches next. It has the usual 16 shades most Arttitude palettes have, with 9 mattes and 7 shimmers. Of the shimmers, 2 are multichromes, 1 is a holochrome, and the rest are duochromes. The mattes felt like the good Arttitude formula. They are talc-free and super pigmented. Most of them had that ultra creamy and soft formula, but a couple of the darker shades were a bit less creamy. Regardless, they still built up well. Cursed is the first multichrome with a deep base and sparkles that shift green, blue, and purple. It has a medium particle size and applies smoothly. It is the second deepest shimmer in the palette. Nightfall is a duochrome with a medium deep tan base and sparkles that shift blue to purple. It has a fine particle size and isn't the most sparkly shade in the palette, but still has shimmer. It is the third deepest shimmer in the palette. Moonlight is an iridescent duochrome that shifts from blue to purple. It has a medium particle size and is quite sparkly, but also slightly squishy. This can be layered over the less sparkly shimmers to amp them up. Mirage is a duochrome with a pigmented, but not fully opaque, light blue base and gold sparkles. It has a medium particle size and some texture, but smooths out on application. It is super sparkly. Submerged is a black-based multichrome with sparkles that shift from green to teal to blue to purple and even magenta at a sharp angle. It is super smooth with a small particle size and creamy without being squishy. It is the deepest shimmer in the palette. Echoes is a holochrome with a sheer base and it shifts pink, peach, yellow. The hollow particles and multichrome sparkles are both a small particle size, making the shadow smooth. There is a slight gray quality to the base, but it almost leans a little blue. Seduce is a duochrome with a pigmented magenta base and blue sparkles that shift slightly to purple. It has a fine particle size and is not as sparkly as the other shimmers, but it does have an intense glow to it. Couple of things I want to mention before starting the makeup look. First of all, my retinol seems to have done a number on my skin recently, and I have some peeling going on around my eyes and around my face, so if you see that, just ignore it. Second of all, I am very excited to be using this palette today of all days, because it is the main day of Diwali. And if you don't know what Diwali is, it is an Indian festival or a South Asian festival. It is one of our most important holidays, and it's actually 5 days, but the main day falls on the new moon, which is today, the day that I'm filming. And the reason that I think it's extra special that I'm using this palette is because if you know me, you know that I like to go out of my way to support South Asian brands and creators, and Arttitude is owned by Rooks, who is South Asian as well. So the fact that I get to use this palette today and I'm going out to dinner, and I'm going to be wearing a look that I'm filming out to dinner, is just filling my heart up with joy. And because I'm going to be wearing a skirt that is this purpley shade, and this matte over here matches it really, really closely, I'm going to be starting with that shade. Now, since this is such a pigmented shade, I made sure to really tap off my brush because I picked up a good amount, since as you can see from the other eye, which I did off camera, I'm laying this down all over my lid and I want it to go on very pigmented. And I always do my other eye off camera just so that you can see what I'm working towards, and also so that I can get a feel for the eyeshadow. But yeah, this eyeshadow is extremely pigmented, and I did like swirl my brush in the pan like a few times, and so there was like a good amount of powder on it, but I also make sure to tap off my brush really well so that I don't get fallout, which I'm not getting any. But usually when that happens, you can risk losing some of the pigment. So I am impressed that this, you know, went on with that kind of like saturation with only one dip. And now I'm just going to get like a bit of a head start on blending this out, but I am going to be using a lighter shade to fully blend. And then I'm also running the shade on the lower lash line about halfway in and connecting it up over here to the outer corner. Now I'm going to pick up this lighter purple shade. And with this shade, I'm first focusing it over here in the inner part of my crease, and I'm going to build it up slowly throughout the crease. This is quite a, I wouldn't say it's a full pastel, but like most lighter purples, it does take a few layers to build up on my skin tone. That is nothing unusual. Most purples do function like this, but I am not going to focus so much on blending it with the darker shade just yet. I'm mostly focused on just getting it in the crease and blend it out for now. Dipping in one more time to get the outer portion over here. You can see, like, in contrast to the lid shade, I am having to dip into this multiple times, even though I am picking up a good amount each time. But it is blending really well, no issues there. I just went back and forth a few times. Then I'm using that same lighter purple on the rest of my lash line, and again here, I do need to build it up a little bit, and then just kind of using it to blend out the darker shade on the outer half over here. So now what I'm going to do is take that first brush that I used to lay down the matte on my lid and take like the teeniest, tiniest dip in the pan. And here I will be focusing on blending the two mattes together, starting on the outer half, the outer corner, and like the very depths of my crease, then slowly bringing it in and making sure that the two are really well meshed together. And I'm having no issues blending here, which, you know, is to be expected. They're in the same, like, similar color families and just darker and lighter shades, so it is pretty easy, but, you know, dark mattes aren't always the easiest to blend out. So I'm happy to see that this is working well, especially because, like I said, I have to wear this out to dinner. Now, before I go in with my shimmers, I'm going to take this shade and add in just a smidge of this to add a little bit more depth to my look. I've already done this eye, so you can tell it didn't add like a huge difference, but it's just a touch of smoke over here that I think is necessary to make the look seem like more intricate than it actually is. So I'm just going to take it and add it like this at a diagonal angle. I think I need to pick up more for this side because I do have quite a bit of pigment here already. And I'm really just like tapping it on. I'm not even going to really blend it much because I do have a lot of, you know, mattes down there already, but just like that, a little something extra. And of course, running that same combo super tight close to my lash line like this. For the shimmers, I'm going to start with this one over here. Now this shimmer has that blue reflect, which you can see on my eye over here, on a pinky purple base, which is why I wanted to lay down this matte first to really amplify that base. And this is probably the least shimmery, like least sparkly shimmer in the palette. It's not quite a satin, but it's just more of like a standard shimmer texture, if that makes sense, while still being a duochrome. But I'm probably going to add more shimmer over this. I just really wanted to get this like super glowy vibe. Using a brush to cover the rest of my lid, and I did not use a glitter primer. You can if you want to, but in my experience, Arttitude shimmers have enough emollients in them to where they will stick down even over a matte without any kind of tacky base. Of course, your mileage may vary though if you have different, you know, eyelids to me. Now I know I want to add more sparkle to this look because this is simply not enough for me. You could just leave it here if you want a more subtle type of look. Not that these are subtle colors, but like the shimmer itself is subtle, but I want to add more sparkle. If I wanted to amp up the blue like sheen over there, I could take this iridescent, which, you know, by nature has a transparent base, and just tap it over to do a little shade cascade, which is just my term for layering eyeshadows, and make the blue more impactful and more sparkly. But I want to do a technique that I did most recently, I think in my Cosmic Beauty Starlight video, where I'm going to take this shimmer instead and just kind of tap it at the base of, I'll just show you. So I actually took that shimmer on a brush. I'm using the same one, I just flipped it around, and I sprayed the brush because I want it to go on super intense, especially since I'm going to be applying it over an existing shimmer. You can see I have it right there. And I'm going to keep my mirror kind of like far away from me, so I'm looking straight ahead. My pupils, my irises are kind of like in the center of my lid, and I'm going to put this right at the base over there. And now that I have a guide for the placement, I can bring the mirror a little closer and be more precise. I picked up a little bit more. Now the brush is not as wet, and I'm going to tap it out as I get a little, or move it a bit upwards, I guess. And this is not quite like a halo eye, but I'm just placing it kind of like right there, close to my lash line almost, so that when I'm like, if you saw my Cosmic Brushes video, this is probably going to be very repetitive for you, but like as I'm like talking and moving my eyes and blinking and stuff like that, it just kind of like catches the light a little bit, and I just really like the effect. And because the shimmer that I use has like a grayish, almost like pastel blue base, I feel like putting it on top of this shimmer that has the blue shimmer helps it kind of like, it works. And with the pink reflect, it's like a pinkish holochrome. It goes with the rest of like the purpley pink vibes, and it just like helps tie everything together. And that's why I wanted to add this over the iridescent blue, was just to bring back more of those like purple pink vibes to go with my skirt. To finish up the look, I'm going to take this shimmer here, but just a very light amount of it. Now, the reason I wanted to do a lighter layer of this is because this shadow does have that blue base, and I'm putting it on my inner corner. So it is going to leave like the lightest cast on my skin tone, because big shock, I ended up picking up more than just a light layer. But like, honestly, I don't really mind the slight cast. It's not like enough to make it appear really like dark in my inner swoop. It's just like, it's not a true iridescent. And I'm actually packing on a bit more down here where I really don't mind if there's a cast. I just really wanted the gold reflect on this because my skirt also does have some like gold detailing on it, and I'm gonna be wearing gold earrings, like jewelry, so I just wanted to pull in some gold. But if you have a more fair skin tone, or if you just don't enjoy like a cast in your inner corner, if you want it to be light and bright, you can go ahead and use this iridescent shade over here. Okay, here's the final look. I did my blush and my lips, and I put on my chumka earrings and my little bindi, and this is what I'm gonna wear out to dinner. I feel very pretty in it. I really like how it turned out, and I feel like that little detail of the holochrome just like in the center of my eye close to my lash line, I feel like that kind of like makes more sense once I have my mascara on, or if you wear lashes, because it kind of helps like, I don't know, I just feel like it looks a little out of place until you do the rest of your makeup, and then it all kind of comes together. Also, really quickly, want to talk about what's on my lips. I used another South Asian founded brand. This is from Kulfi. It's their satin lipstick in the shade Maz Misra, which I feel like these lipsticks are a little slept on. I did purchase this with my own money because look at what a beautiful neutral this is on my complexion. It has like a slight mauve-y undertone, which goes with the purple tones on my face, but overall, I love like their range of neutral lipsticks, and also this formula is so comfortable, and I love a satin lipstick. Here is Sparkle Cam, so you can see how beautiful this look is in real life. I will say the first shimmer that I put my lid, it's a duochrome, so it's not like the most shifty, but look at how it plays with that other shimmer that I put along my lash line. It is just like the most magical combination, and with the gold in the inner swoop, I just feel like a princess, and I really love how this look turned out. Now, per usual, let me give you my thoughts on this palette. I do want to start with the color story because we have had a lot of mermaid and even siren inspired palettes in the past year or two, I would say. And I did see that the owner of Arttitude Rooks said that she has had this concept in mind for like 3 years. She's been working on the palette for 2 years, and her take on it is that she wanted to really like showcase the more grungy, moody, sultry, deep side of sirens, and like kind of show how colors lose their saturation and become deeper the further you go underwater, which is why this palette, I think, leans as dark as it does, because looking at it, you don't have a ton of lighter shades. I would say that the lighter shades in terms of mattes is really just this one. This is more of a mid-tone, and then in terms of shimmers, there's just this iridescent, and then these two are more mid-tones, but everything else is on the deeper side. So I would say that this palette is for lovers of deeper, more jewel tones, but with like a touch of desaturation. Not fully, because this isn't like a super muted palette, but I would say that some of these mattes, like even this one over here, this like grayish beige shade, and some of the other tones just have like a smidge of desaturation to them. And just to really emphasize that it's not as desaturated as it may seem at first glance, here it is next to the Arcana palette, which was the previous release, and Arcana is far more muted, has more of those like grayish undertones, and it's also much lighter. And I remember thinking when I saw this palette, like, yes, there are a couple of deepening up options, but not that many. And I did see a couple people saying like this palette just lacks depth, but I actually think that these two palettes will go so well together. They really do complement each other in being like mostly cool tone color stories, but with Submerged being a lot more jewel toned and deeper, and Arcana being more muted and lighter. I also personally did not see any dupes within the palettes. Like, yes, there are a couple of similar tones, but here are some swatches so that you can see between the two, like how similar they are, if at all. I don't think that they are that similar, but you know, that's up to you to decide. Going back to Submerged, I am a fan of jewel tones and deeper tones, and I personally don't need that many light shades in my palettes to work with them. That being said, I do think that this is like mostly deepening up options, you know what I mean? And I'm really happy for this palette to have a purple, because I think that could be used, you know, with either of these purple tones, even this grayish one over here, and even the blue shade. And personally though, I wish that this matte over here had been swapped out for more of a lighter green tone to work with this shade and this shade over here. I just like this kind of like beige-ish matte is pretty useless for me. I don't really like these types of tones, but like I understand that if you have, I always say this, but like if you have a more fair skin tone, I can see how that would be useful. Quality wise, the mattes in this palette felt like the ones in Arcana, and around Arcana, I did notice like a change in the matte formula. I believe that's when they switched over to a talc-free formula, which to me feels even like creamier and softer than their previous mattes, which were a touch on the dry side in my opinion. These, on the other hand, are very like soft, almost like powdery, but they don't have like a ton of kick up. They're not powdery in that way. They just feel super soft to the touch. And in swatches and on my eye, I have had no issues like building them up, blending them out, or anything like that. I actually do prefer this matte formula to their older formula. Now moving on to the shimmers, and the first thing I want to talk about is that this palette, in contrast to previous palettes from the brand, has all special shimmers. And what I mean by that is shifty shades. So there are 2 multichromes, 1 holochrome, and then the rest are duochromes. But in previous palettes, there have usually been a mix of more like standard shimmers, like non-shifty shades, and shifty shades, whether those are multichromes or duochromes. This palette also has 7 shimmers, in contrast to recent palettes from the brand that have all had 6 shimmers each. But surprisingly, this palette does not cost much more than those previous palettes, at least if you live in the UK. Of course, in the US now, with tariffs going up across the board, all the palettes are going to cost more. But in the context of the lineup from the brand, this is not like that much more exorbitant. And I'm really happy to see that, because though I love a multichrome, I love a shifty shadow, I also like standard shimmers. As long as they're like sparkly, I'm happy. And so like, I'm not going to complain about having more shifty shades in a palette, but I also would have been fine with like regular shimmers, you know. I'm just happy that this is not going to cost like an arm and a leg for most people. Also, I'm going to take this as an opportunity to say I love that this palette is magnetic and that the pans are labeled, because so many brands are moving to doing magnetic palettes but don't label the backs of the pans, which if you do BYOP, it can get really confusing about where a shade came from. So I love that they're labeled. Quality-wise with the shimmers, I'm really happy with this formula. I'm glad that nothing in this palette is super flaky or textured, because again, with past palettes before Arcana, there were some like extra textured and super emollient shades, even like kind of squishy, and nothing in this palette is super flaky or super squishy. This shade over here, the Iridescent, is a little soft. Like there is a small dent from like the repeated swatching that I do, but it's not squishy per se. It's just a little soft. All in all, the quality of the palette is great. We have had a lot of mermaid siren themed palettes, like I said, of late, and it's nice to see a bit of a different take, something that goes a bit moodier, murkier, deeper. But I'm gonna be honest, like this is not a palette that I can see myself using on its own a ton, which isn't how I do my makeup like most of the time day to day, but it is something that I like to take into consideration when evaluating a palette. I do feel, even though I am not someone who necessarily like needs a ton of lighter mattes, this palette is just like super, super dark, and I will have to pair it with another palette to get the most use out of it. But because it goes so well with Arcana, like I can see myself reaching for the two of them together a lot. That is it for this video. Let me know what you thought of the palette, whether you're going to be picking it up. If you have any questions about the palette that I didn't get to in this video, as soon as I see the question, I will try to answer it, especially if it's before launch, because I know that launch days can be kind of a little crazy. Please don't forget to give this video a like before you go, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!